So this is the second part of a two-part series concerning what you should include in a lease as a landlord. In the original segment, we covered some of the basic things like names, addresses, how much the rent is, how much the security deposit is, the beginning date of the lease, the ending date of the lease, a lot of basic things. So now I want to get into some more items that a lot of people don't necessarily think about when they're putting a lease together. And these are things, yes, they can make your lease pretty substantial, and it can be quite a few pages, but it covers you as well as notifying the tenant about things that they might otherwise not even think about. So some of the things that you need to include in a lease are when a tenant leaves, if you have a key system, they have to return the keys. How do they communicate with you if they need something or a repair is needed? Are you allowing emails? Is that the only way you want to communicate? Do you allow them to communicate via text messages? How about with repairs? Are they supposed to call you as the landlord? Do you have property managers that they need to communicate with? Or let's say you're managing your own buildings. Maybe you want them to communicate directly with the individual who provides the repairs and maintenance. So that keeps you out of the loop of having to call the tenant. Tenant needs to have something fixed. Call the tenant back. When are you available? Okay, let me call my repair guy. He says, I'm not available that day. Call the tenant back. Do you have another day? So if the two of them can communicate together without your intervention, speeds things along, doesn't waste time. So that's another key item on communication. You need to have information about temperature control. Let's say it's the middle of winter and the temperature drops below a certain point that maybe you set, maybe legislation where you are sets a minimum temperature for apartments. You need to advise them. Once it hits a spot like that, they need to communicate with you so you can immediately fix the issue. Talk about lead paint. You have a federal pamphlet to provide them concerning lead paint. They should sign off on the fact that they actually got that. What about repairs and maintenance if they decide to paint on their own? No self-repairing, no painting. There is nothing they should do to the apartment without your consent, and for the most part, don't give them consent. You have people that do that. You want to be consistent. So that should be in the lease, that they can't do anything on their own. There may be safety issues, especially if you've got children in the apartments. Things about balconies, glass, playing around dumpsters. All these things should be included in an addendum or within the lease, and they sign off on it saying they understand if their kids get hurt, you don't want to be liable for it. You probably get sued, but at least you've got some documentation that you warn them in advance that these things were not supposed to occur. Proper notice upon termination. How many days do you want when they decide to leave? How many days do you want when you say you need to renew your lease and I need it by X date? You need to communicate these things right in the lease up front. Now, I know there's been a lot of success with people that I know where they do have a starting and ending date of the lease, but they also provide within the lease the fact that it's a month-to-month lease. You can terminate it as a landlord with a certain number of days' notice. They can terminate with a certain number of days' notice. That's something you need to talk to an attorney about. How do you do that? Because if you've got a bad tenant in there and you want to be able to tell them, hey, you've got 60 days to move out, or I'm raising your rent by $200, whatever it is, it depends on how you set that lease up. Do you want a month-to-month situation, or do you want to just have a structured lease with a start and end date and take it from there? Credit reporting. If they don't pay you, Are you going to report to a credit bureau? If they owe you back payments when they move out, are you going to report that to a credit bureau? Let them know. If you are, they need to know that. You need to communicate that. It will keep them on alert that they better work something out with you, okay? Late fees, you need to talk about late fees. What are the late fees? If something happens in the apartment that is their fault, do you have an hourly fee if somebody has to come over and fix it? You know, little Johnny flushed a rag down the toilet, now it's not working. Whose fault is that? Are you going to charge them for things like that? And how much are you going to charge? Hourly, minimum charge. Put that in your lease. Are there going to be some move-out fees for things that need to be fixed? If they left furniture or something like that, are you going to charge them for having it removed? Have that as an addendum of the lease or put it right in the lease. You also want to talk about abandoned property, and make sure, again, make sure you give them a flyer on the lead, provide the flyer on the lead situation in the building, especially if it was built before 1978. And maybe it's something on asbestos. If you know there's no asbestos, or if you know there is asbestos, you need to provide information on that. So these are things, there are other things you can put in the lease, and I think these are things that will really make you think about what needs to be provided, what can protect you, and also what puts the tenant on notice, so that there's no misunderstanding of what or was not communicated. So thanks again for listening. I hope this has been a help. This is the second part of a two-part series that I've done, and I will talk to you again soon. Thanks.